Hello, friends. Hello, friends. A tradition unlike any other.
Oh, my goodness. In your life, have you seen anything like that?
There it is! Adam Scott, a life changer. Mashed potato!
Here it comes.
A quick note from our good friends at Cobra about their innovative new family of LTDX drivers, fairways, and hybrids. The LTDX woods feature power core technology, which lowers spin and delivers powerful ball speed upon impact. To ensure the new LTDX line is able to optimize performance for all types of players, it's available in 3 distinct models. The LTDX LS is a low spin model designed for skilled players with faster swing speeds. The LTDX Max combines maximum stability and maximum draw bias. Thank you very much. And the LTDX is the perfect blend of both, creating the best combination of low spin and maximum forgiveness. For more information about the LTDX line, visit www.cobragolf.com.au or try one for yourself at your nearest golf shop. This is the 19th Tee podcast. The boys are back, baby. Drudester, after a well-earned spot of leave. It's very unusual. It's usually me taking the holiday. I've had a few of those in the last couple of months, but you're back, Drudester. You're looking years younger, as you always do when you come back from down in the beautiful southwest part of Western Australia. How are you, my friend?
Very well, mate. Great to be back. Great to be in the ears of our listeners. Yeah, wonderful place, the southwest of WA. Between Dunsborough is quickly coming back up my list. Like I used to be all about yelling up and margs, but Dunsborough and its proximity to really a lot of those breweries and wineries is coming back up the list. So
I think it gets a little overlooked purely because it's almost treated as a hub. Like you come in and out
absolutely.
of Dunsborough to shop or fill up with fuel.
Yes.
Or you don't necessarily stay.
No. If you do though, you're treated to a great golf course. So
fantastic.
I played 3 rounds there actually while I was down, so that was fun. And another one at Margaret River, so great course. Margaret River, underrated track.
Really,
love it. Very good course. Yep,
good to hear. All right, before we crack on, we will speaking of crack open a beer. Thanks to our good friends, the team at Gage Roads Brewing Company. It looks like you and I are enjoying the boys. The alcohol-free option, the mature choice for a Monday evening. So
and the mature choice for 11 days after being in the southwest of WA. I'll tell you what, the wedding that I was at on last Friday, we drank all the single fin, literally. They had to go and get more. And
all the single fin in Western Australia.
Yeah, they had to go and get more. So good friends, Gage Roads.
Big thanks to Gage Roads, of course, WA's premier craft brewery named after the strip of ocean between Rottnest and Fremantle. Speaking of weddings, before we get cracking, you've obviously spent a little bit of time down south pulling together some final plans for your own nuptials coming up in February of next year. We've spoken about it a lot. Have had cause to think about it over the weekend because Justin Warren has again bugged me to be he's my +1 to your wedding. So we're working through those terms for the whiz. Just wanted to say I've had some thoughts around maybe how we can incorporate the show. A big part of your life will continue to be a big part of your life as a married man. Obviously, we don't want to get in the way of the ceremony itself, but I'm thinking maybe something tasteful. Maybe something the morning of. I think we could be similar to like a live from the US Open or live from the Masters, live from the wedding. Yeah. I think maybe I'll probably peg myself more as a I reckon you've got a bit of Justin Leonard about you. I'm probably a bit more Brandel. But maybe a live from the wedding. Yeah. That's how we peg it. Maybe a show the day of. You wouldn't be doing too much. I wouldn't have thought prior to about 3 p.m. in the afternoon. So
no, I like that. I mean, maybe we could do a little series. I mean, Friday night, I'm sure we'll be having a couple of beers. There'll be no doubt we'll be having a couple of beers. So maybe we can do part 1, part 2.
Don't mind that.
Maybe
part 3 at the recovery. Live.
I was going to say maybe part 3, sort of 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. I don't know. Got to get that
from the reception.
Got to get that past the boss, and then obviously part 4 from the recovery.
Maybe we could do that. So
like 2
live
minutes
from
max.
pre-drinks, live from the welcome drinks, live from the wedding, which obviously won't actually be the wedding, be the day of, live from the reception, live from the recovery. I reckon that's the way to go. Now, I know we're getting terribly sidetracked as we tend to do, but we haven't spoken in a few weeks, so you'll forgive us. I actually think live from the reception's got a bit of legs. And the reason I say this, you wouldn't have heard it because only absolute nuffs of the Melbourne Football Club like myself would listen to the Gus and Gorney podcast, which is the weekly podcast hosted by Angus Brayshaw and Captain Max Gorn. They actually did an episode roughly 11:30 p.m. to midnight, the night of the grand final in 2021, from the middle of Optus Stadium.
Wowee.
And it is 10.5 minutes of some of the greatest content you've ever heard. And to give you an idea, so generally they'll do an episode a week, roughly about 40 minutes. I wish we were that disciplined. First 10 to 15 minutes kind of looking back on the game from the previous week, and then they have a guest, more than likely a player, but it could be an assistant coach, someone connected to the club. The guest for the grand final audition was the Premiership Cup. So they're asking questions of the Premiership Cup. It's brilliant stuff. But I would think if you've got 10.5 minutes to give up, go and have a listen, because that is what I would envisage for live from the reception. Probably be a similar level of energy, probably be a similar level of drivel, but very, very entertaining.
Yes. Okay. Maybe we'll schedule in for like the dessert break or something. We can fit it in there. Who knows? We'll run that one past the boss as well. Make sure that gets. So
fair to say, probably the only one that happened is live from the welcome drinks, because that won't get in the way. Maybe live from the recovery, but absolutely nothing on the way.
And the wedding day, absolutely the wedding day. We'll just tend to see where it goes. But no, looking forward to it. It'll be fun. You're emceeing, so I'm looking forward to hearing how much you plug this podcast to the 80 to 90 people who couldn't give a flying fuck about golf.
Tirelessly. They'll be pretty over it by the end of the night, I would have thought, given how often I mentioned the 19th Tee podcast. Now, you obviously have been away for a little while. There's been a bit on.
Yes.
I think last time we spoke properly, now people heard an episode last week, which was with Jimmy Emanuel, which I thoroughly enjoyed that chat. He's a very good man, Jimmy, and a great contributor to the Australian golf community. So if you haven't heard that, make sure you jump back and listen to the chat with Jimmy Emanuel. But when we actually last spoke properly was the build-up to the President's Cup. So it's been a little while because that's happened, and we've had another 2 tournaments over the weekend. We're going to go chronologically back in order. So we're going to start with the weekend's events, and then we'll have a bit of a chat about the President's Cup after that. So first and foremost, he's not Australian, but we definitely love to claim him as an Australasian, and that is, of course, Ryan Fox, who is a winner at the Alfred Dunhill over the weekend. A very special win, I think, in a variety of respects, not least of which one of the great components of this tournament is the playing partners of the professionals, and it's often a parent. Rory played with his dad this week, or a celebrity of some description. Ryan Fox has played the Alfred Dunhill for many years now consecutively with Shane Warne as his playing partner, and was quite emotional after the win. On green interview in the 72nd hole, talking about Shane Warne, and said that he was the only person he could think of in that moment. That obviously he wasn't there to see Foxy win, but felt as though that he was present, if that makes sense, throughout the day to trying to guide him to the victory. So one of the absolute nicest guys seemingly in world golf, gets to a career high ranking now, somewhere in the 20s, I believe. Could make a case that he was, and we did make the case that he was very unlucky not to be picked in the President's Cup side, and he gives the best possible answer, and that goes and wins his first opportunity afterwards.
Yes, I was exactly going to say that. The 2 winners that we had this week on the PGA Tour and on the European Tour both didn't get picked and went, well, how you going? I'm right here. But pretty awesome to see. I mean, he's a guy that I think for a long time, a lot of people, all they sort of thought about when they thought about Ryan Fox was how far he can hit the ball and how much power he's gotten. And yes, that's certainly a big part of his game, but his game seems to have developed so much more than that little cliche that I think everyone kind of had maybe a couple of years ago. And so to see him, winning again is something really special, I think, for obviously I think we claim him a little bit of our own, being down in the Oceania region, and to see him put together just 4 really solid rounds, even though 2 over par in that second round, but to come back and fire 7 under on the third day was just really, really special. So and as you mentioned, the piece to camera at the end talking about Warney, obviously, clearly meant a lot to him. So yeah, I'm pumped. I'm pumped to see Foxy win, and also at the same time, a little bit of a middle finger to the selectors of the international team.
Buck to recent form as well. I'm just looking back through the last couple of starts. So missed the cut at the Kazoo Open de France the week prior at Le Golf National. Withdrew after 1 round at the PGA Championship, and also missed the cut at the European Masters. I did hear Trevor Immelman speak out of the President's Cup, called out Ryan Fox as one of the very unlucky ones, and suggested that he'd played so much golf that maybe performances at the back end of the season, like the 3 I just mentioned, potentially cost him a spot in the end. So, good to see him go back to the form that we know. And as you say, like 66 out the gate on Thursday, followed up by a 2 over 74. He wasn't necessarily cited at the pointy end of the leaderboard. And then that 65 on Saturday, followed up by a 68 today, a 4 under. Not the best score on the board on Sunday, but certainly enough to get the job done. And yeah, he's a super calm character. I think you can see that with the types of people that were breathing down his neck, Alex Noor and Rory McIlroy, we'll get to in a moment. Looking down the leaderboard, there are a couple of others coming, including Tyrrell Hatton. But yeah, I don't know. You just can't sleep on Fox. He's an incredibly capable player. 25 now is that world ranking that I mentioned, career high, and 3rd win on the DP World Tour. He's often overlooked, I think, because increasingly, definitely now at the emergence of LIV, the European Tour, I'd say is losing its former standing in the game. But yeah, he can absolutely mix it with the best on his day, Ryan Fox, and he showed that. So has also committed to a significant stint back here across the summer. So really looking forward to seeing him return to Australian shores. I'm sure he'll also play the New Zealand Open and go through that swing over there as well. But yeah, he's a quality player and a quality human.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. Super pumped to see him win, as I said. And, I look at some of the stats here that really kind of jump out from the season, and it's, his driving distance, he's obviously inside the top 10. It's his driving accuracy. He sits 176th for the season. I know that we're kind of only very early days into it, but he still manages to score very well. He ranks 3rd for scoring, and there's no doubt that he's going to continue to win tournaments. And if he comes back, when he comes back to Australia and New Zealand, there's no doubt that he's going to be one of the key players to watch. He's going to draw a crowd like many of the others that are coming back. And it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
So moving down the leaderboard, there's probably not too many others that I want to speak about specifically from this tournament. I do want to talk about Rory McIlroy. So question, I was going to say not necessarily with notice, definitely without it, to be fair. I'm lumping this on you. Is it possible we are seeing the best portion of Rory's career currently? When I say currently, I probably take it back to, we've spoken about this a lot. We've spoken about where was the genesis, and the genesis was probably the Sunday singles defeat of Xander Schauffele, I believe it was, at the Ryder Cup. But really, it probably kickstarted on that back 9 at Augusta. And since then, he's been in a patch of form. Because I remember not too long after we kicked this podcast off, he was in rarefied air in terms of top 5s, right? And I remember saying at the time, what's this, late 2019, kind of into 2020? Or was it 2018? I lose track these days. No, it would have been late 2019.
Yeah, I think so.
Into early 2020, he was rolling off top 5s like it was nobody's business and barely looked like he was getting out of 3rd gear. And obviously, it's odd to say, is this the best portion of his career, given he hasn't won a major for how many odd years now? And he went through that patch where he did when he's 4. And incredible patch in kind of the early, I think what they call the noughties or the 2010s. But I don't know, mate. There's something about the golf that he's playing at the moment. Stumbled across a stat here from Jamie Weir, who he is a reporter for Sky Sports, does all the golf. He's the one doing all the interviews pre-tournament. He's excellent, Jamie Weir. Rory McIlroy since the Masters. So since that back 9 on the Sunday where he breathed a little bit of fire into the tournament and put the slightest bit of pressure on Cam Smith and Scotty Scheffler. So since that tournament, 2nd, 5th, 8th, 18th, win, 5th, 19th, 3rd, miscut, 8th, win, 2nd, 4th, 4th. And is now up to 2nd in the world and closing the gap on Scotty Scheffler. So are we seeing the best portion of his career at present?
Quite possibly. I think we're probably seeing arguably the most consistent portion of his career. I mean, there was no doubt that, win majors 2011, I think I was just looking here, 2011 US Open, 2012 PGA Championship, 2013 PGA Championship, and 2013 Open, and a couple of WGCs in there as well. I think, I don't know, maybe it's recency bias as well, but you look at 2021-22 season, 16 events played, 3 wins, 1 second, 1 third, 10 top 10s, 13 top 25s, made the cut 14 out of 16 times. Like, it's just incredibly consistent. And that's probably, maybe selling his performances short in previous years because it wasn't as bad as maybe what we make it out to be sometimes. But we could possibly be seeing the best. It's hard to know because, I mean, where do you draw the line in some of those majors? I mean, 2011, his only win was a major. Fast forwarding, that 2012 season was incredibly special. 4 wins, 2 seconds, a third, 10 top 10s, but 3 missed cuts. So I feel like it is more consistent, and I feel like it's more impressive in a way. And not to keep harping on a storyline that we continue to talk about, but the stuff that he's dealing with away from the course in terms of obviously becoming a father, and he's got his family life, but also the leadership figure that he's having to cut for the PGA Tour must be taking an enormous toll on him. So for him to bundle all of that together and deliver the performances that he has over the past 7, 8, 9, 10 months, whenever we're going back to, I think probably the back end of that Ryder Cup, as you mentioned, was really the turning point. To put all that together for that period of time, I think is incredibly special. And it's probably the most impactful golf that he's played. It feels like now there's a genuine chance that he could win another major. He could win the Masters, whereas for a couple of years there, maybe we didn't truly believe it. And I think that's absolutely flicked in my head anyway.
Spot on. Oh, I think you've articulated that really well. I'm glad you mentioned the extra burden that he carries at the moment. I don't speak, of course, of his child. It's a blessing. I speak, of course, of seemingly being the face of the resistance. And I say that intentionally because while there's definitely 2 architects behind the scene, the other being, of course, Tiger Woods, Tiger's not present. He is not a public figure anymore. He doesn't go to tournaments other than Charlie's at present. Rory's turning up every week and getting asked about it, speaking to it, essentially becoming the face of it. And, Tiger's earned that right. Tiger has enough power and influence behind the scenes that he probably is making as much genuine change as Rory is out front. But it is across the bear. There's no doubt about that, more so than Tiger is through this process. And he's also playing every week. On top of that, Tiger is not doing that. So all of that in the context of what's happening in the golf that he's playing, your word may be better. Maybe it is the consistent golf we've seen as opposed to the best. But the fact that he has got himself to a place where he has a genuine chance each and every time he enters a tournament is a far, far cry from where he was, and maybe where we ever thought was possible he'd get to again. That in and of itself is very exciting. So it's just it's really good to see. Another quirky one, Rory related, from Kyle Porter, one of my favourites in the golf riding community. Rory at tournaments played at the old course this year. So, of course, the Open Championship and now the Alfred Dunhill has faced 322 golfers. He's beaten 316 of those, which equates to 98.1%. Lost to 5, tied with 1, 0 trophies. So
Brutal.
It's brutal. Golf's it's a game of inches, and that's proof of it. But yeah, he is in a purple patch. It is fair to say, and as with all things, we should appreciate it while it's here because it is fickle and it can go very quickly. We hope it doesn't. It's awesome to see a genuine, I think, statesman and leader of the game, and absolutely one of mine. I know one of your favourite players, one of many people's favourite players, back to where we know he belongs and what he's capable of.
7 out of the last 10 majors, he's finished inside the top 10, including the last 5 that he's played in. So he's also standing up when it counts as well. So
trending.
Good to see.
Keep an eye. Like next year, I think I'd be very, very surprised if we don't see him genuinely challenged. Like the Masters, it was a flash in the pan. We got excited, and as we should. That's some of the best 9 holes of golf we've ever seen at Augusta National. Wasn't a 4-day. He didn't mount a 4-day challenge consistently. No, I think that might change whether it's there or elsewhere next year. I think he will give one, if not more of them, a genuine nudge next year.
We can only hope.
We can. Just going down the leaderboard from an Australian perspective, Drudes, Mika.
Yes.
The great man, David Micheluzzi, is
so good.
The highest finishing Australian in a tie for 36, which is great for Mika. Doesn't make a great deal of appearances on the DP World Tour, so you've got to take your opportunities when you can. So he finishes in a tie for 36 and pockets, if you don't mind, tick over 31,000 euros, so a bit over 50K for Mika for his troubles. Great to see. A name we haven't seen for a little while, nor spoken of, but certainly one of my favourites, and that's purely because, well, not purely, he was one of the first to give his time on this program and is a great bloke. Maverick Antcliffe was the next best Aussie and the only other Aussie to make the cut. Mav finished in a tie for 61st at 1 over. And then I'm looking down. Gailey missed the cut, unfortunately for Gailey.
Started really well, though.
Didn't he? Didn't he start? Excellent. Also, remains one of the great follows on Instagram, the Golf Horse. Yeah. He's just had an absolute time at the Alfred Dunhill.
Yeah, particularly at the dinner.
At the dinner, yeah. Getting photos with anyone with half a profile. I think Ronan Keating popped up there at one stage on Gailey's story. So
I'd get a photo with Ronan Keating.
So would I. He's a good man. Boys own fame, of course. Yeah. He's so Gailey's missed the cut. Jeff Ogilvy missed the cut. Started with a 66, and then went 76, 75. A miscut for Louis Dobler. A miscut for Pikey. Jed Morgan, Blake Windred, Jordan Zunick, Nathan Barbieri, Zach Murray, Muzzer, the big giraffe, Josh Armstrong, Austin Batista, Scotty Hend. That's all. They all missed the cut as well. It's a massive tournament, isn't it?
Scott Hend with an 82 in the second round. Oh, gee.
Hendy. Oh, maybe a touch less time on Twitter. A little touch more time on the range. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So those were the Aussies. Big congrats to Mika in particular, and obviously Mav Antcliffe as well, playing all 4 rounds and playing across the weekend. So that is the Alfred Dunhill, Drew. So let's move across to the PGA Tour, where Canadian Mackenzie Hughes won for the second time, 6 years after he saluted for the first time on the PGA Tour. Took 2 playoff holes for him to secure the Sanderson Farms Championship. And as you mentioned, Drew, so right at the top there, another one of the names that was probably just on the outside of Trevor Immelman's thinking at the President's Cup, and he goes out and wins the thing, obviously in a playoff over Sepp Straka, who we'll get to in a moment as well. But Mackenzie Hughes couldn't have asked for a better response, I don't think, than this.
No, very impressive too. Because he was in the clubhouse, I believe, if I'm getting my timeline right, he was in the clubhouse at 17 under, and Sepp Straka forced his way into the playoffs. So to then go out and come out birdie the second hole and win was impressive. And yeah, again, just a little bit of a how you going for Trevor Immelman, but he spoke about that sort of driving his motivation and whatnot. So good to see another member of the international team in terms of conversation for selection, getting a win and putting his name forward for a couple of years' time anyway.
I know it's certainly not the strongest of fields because you had a number of players playing the Alfred Dunhill, but you look at the top five, 4 of the top 5, you got Garrick Higo and Dean Burmester, the 2 South Africans there, and Emiliano Grillo as well. So 4 of the top 5 available for the international team, 4 who were not selected in the week after the President's Cup. It's promising. And I know we're going to speak a little bit about the Pres Cup in a moment, but probably speaks to, or maybe debunks a myth that there's a lack of depth. Certainly not the depth of the American team, but there's no shortage of players to choose from for the internationals. And I think that is shown in a result like this.
Agreed. Could have stepped in quite easily for someone like Taylor Pendrith, who managed to go 0-4-0. So, I'm sure we'll get to that in a short moment. So there is absolutely depth. There's no doubt about it. I mean, it is not often that you sort of scroll through the first 5 names on a leaderboard and don't see any Americans there. I know sort of Emiliano Grillo was tied 5th alongside Nick Hardy and Keegan Bradley and Mark Hubbard as well. So it was there was certainly some Americans sniffing around, but it's not often that the top 5 of a leaderboard don't include any Americans.
Very, very rare. Drudes, I just want to talk about Sepp Straka for a moment. So obviously big congrats to Mackenzie Hughes. So Sepp Straka, the septic tank, as he's been nicknamed by the Shotgun Start podcast, one of the great podcasts out of America. The unheralded Austrian. So broke through for his first victory in last year's season, but he was kind of a name that really came to the foreground in the playoffs. Got his way all the way through to the Tour Championship and quickly emerging, or at least putting his name forward if he can continue this run of form as a left field selection for the European team. I know that sounds odd that we're looking that far ahead, but photos today of the captains in Rome doing a promotion, so we're not all that far away from Marco Simeone Golf Club there in Rome, and the thinking really starting to turn now to the Ryder Cup, and Sepp Straka's really cutting away some fat ahead of him, making a name for himself and starting to figure in some decent tournaments.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I don't think it's that bad of a shout, to be honest. I mean, there's no doubt the talent's always been there. Just having a look at his profile back here, he represented Austria at the 2020 Olympics. He's the first Austrian-born player to earn a PGA Tour card. Played golf at the University of Georgia, so a big Division 1 school, and there's no doubt that he's got a lot of talent. I'm pretty sure he hits a pretty long ball from reports. If I'm not getting confused here, and his driving accuracy is pretty good as well. So, yeah, no doubt that I'd say that he'd have to be on the radar of the European team. I mean, particularly if more and more continue to jump to live golf and those sanctions still maintain effect, there's no doubt that he could be put on the blue jumper.
Absolutely, figure you would have thought. In terms of Australians, it was pretty thin in the field. Harrison Endicott, the only Aussie that teed up this week at the Sanderson, he missed the cut by 5 strokes. In fact, the cut was at -2. He finished 3 over after Thursday, Friday. So second appearance on the PGA Tour officially for Harrison Endicott. T12 at the Fortinet, if you don't mind his debut. So certainly came out the gate very strongly. Be interesting to see where he goes from here. That T12 put a bit of money in his pocket as well, which is a bit of a safety net. I saw him do an interview with Tony Weber during the week, where he spoke about that. Obviously, despite missing the cut, he does have that money covered in terms of travel costs and accommodation costs under the new scheme of the PGA Tour as well. So we said it to him at the time, hell of a year to be coming up into the PGA Tour, and he's certainly made the most, at least of his debut. It'd be great to track his progress and see where he goes in the coming weeks, Harrison Endicott, Drudes.
Yes. The only other thing I had for this event was the trophy. Very high on my list of trophies. The rooster. I do like it. So, yeah, I rate a good animal trophy. No, Jesus, got to be careful when you say animal trophy. That got to be very careful when you say animal trophy these days. But
not the type that have been shot and stuffed and mounted.
Yeah, definitely not that type. But no, I do like to rate the Sanderson Farms trophy. What else do you got? Where else are we going?
Well, I just want to, just while we're on the PGA Tour, because you and I haven't really spoken too much about it since we launched the idea as a bit of a harebrained last-minute Hail Mary, which is fairly common of this podcast, to be fair. But we are 2 rounds into fantasy golf. We took the plunge ahead of the fortnight, the start of a new season, where we thought we'd go head-to-head. Now, I have beaten you, my roster of Christian Bezadenhout, Emiliano Grillo, Denny McCarthy, and then I subbed in Davis Riley because JT Poston missed the cut. My roster has defeated you 144 points to 130 as a result of the Sanderson, but you are, in fact, still maintaining a comfy lead courtesy of your big win at the Fortinet. So through 2 tournaments, you have a 622 to 569 point lead. The reason I bring it up is because when we did it, we said that we go head to head and have some sort of stake on it. STAKE as opposed to STEAK. Mind you, we could have a stake on it.
Why not?
I like stake. But we would have some sort of bet on it. Now, we've not come up with the terms. We've had to you, your objections here if you feel strongly about it. I thought it'd be great to throw it out to the listeners.
Okay. Yep. I like it.
So maybe we do a little Instagram poll, throw the question up on Facebook. What should the punishment be? Or what should we shouldn't say punishment. We shouldn't phrase people and lead people's thinking into a punishment. But what should the stake be? The loser does X or the winner gets X. I think we should open it up to the 19th T family. What are your thoughts?
I like that. I did have a couple of ideas in the back of my mind, but I will maybe I'll pass them on to people that I know that listen, and then they can send them in, and then we'll do it that way. But I like that idea of sending it out to the listeners.
There you go.
I like it. Good thinking. We'll get that up hopefully tomorrow if I remember to do it.
And that's big of me because I'm currently losing. So I could have just forgotten all about it and never brought it up. I just want that to be put on the record if possible, please.
Yes. No, I will.
Now, Drudes, President's Cup. As I mentioned at the top, it was the last thing we spoke about properly. We did our preview. I think it would be fair to say at the time I was a little bit more casual in my disappointment than you were at where we perceived the tournament and the format had got to as a result of the defection of, particularly from the international team, a number of live players. Fast forward 2 weeks, you've watched it, you've digested it. How do you reflect on the 2022 President's Cup?
Well, look, I'm pleasantly surprised. First and foremost, I think that needs to be said. After day 2, I was nervous. I'm not going to lie. When it was 8-2, I thought, maybe my prediction of 27-3 could be coming to genuine fruition here, but pleasantly surprised to, what did you say? I think you said it was going to be like 24-6 or something like that, or 23-7, something a little more reasonable.
24-6. Yeah. 24-6,
Anyway, look.
I said, yeah.
So, but yeah, you know, the third day rounds 3 and 4 were pretty good for the internationals to pick up a bunch of points. And then, you know, the singles were, you know, largely evenly matched. And we end up losing 17.5 to 12.5. So all in all, I was pleasantly surprised, and I genuinely didn't expect us to be getting that many points. Like it wasn't trying to be a bit that we were going to be that shit, but I genuinely thought that's how it was going to play out. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, I don't know. You probably had your eye on this a little more closely than I did, being away, but I still don't feel like it generated that much hype. And I don't know if that's just the President's Cup in general, whether that was the President's Cup this year because the lineups were less than what they could and should have been, whether it was just everything going on. I don't know if that's your sort of feelings in that way as well.
I don't know. I got pretty swept up in it all, to be fair. And I think that's a completely reasonable assessment if you weren't dialed into the coverage. If because it clearly wasn't generating a lot of hype. If a casual watcher or someone who is a passionate golf supporter but had other things going on, such as yourself, wasn't seeing much coverage. But I think if you were dialed in, it was hard not to, just get caught up in it all. And I have to, I'm very, very, very happy to be eating my words. At 24-6 prediction, 4-1 after the first day, 8-2, as you mentioned, after the second. It was reasonable to think we were trending that way. But I don't know. This is funny, particularly given how we spoke pre-tournament. I don't know how you could watch that and think that the format needs or requires drastic change. I'm all for. I still love to see a mixed male-female event, whether it's this or something else. I also saw a train of thought that suggested why don't women just have their own President's Cup, which I thought was a great idea too. Why does it have to be with the men? But I don't know how you could watch that and think, yeah, we should blow this up and start again. I don't know how you could watch Trevor Immelman speak afterwards and get so impassioned and talk about his level of frustration and insult when he hears the team referred to as a joke or they don't take it seriously. It was great. And save for a few things like, we talk about maybe some selection decisions, Corey Connors and Taylor Penrith 0-4. That's a really tough look. That's a really, really tough look. And you've got the guys that we've spoken about already, in addition to Lucas Herbert, Minwoo Lee, all on the outside looking in, half a point from a few of them, a point from one or two of them. We're talking about a different situation. Hideki Matsuyama, we're literally talking about the bounce of a ball of a flag stick against Sam Burns in the singles. That drops. This is probably a different conversation because then the pressure is well and truly on, Schauffele on Finau to get the job done. It just changes. It's little things, right? Like we're talking about little sliding doors moments. And it wasn't certainly as close as Royal Melbourne, nor did it feel as close as Royal Melbourne did. But there's something about team golf that is absolutely undefeated. And I just won't hear any other train of thought. It is the best format of golf. And to see how much that international team bought in, given not just the challenges faced when you lose a number of your best players, no Answer, no Smith, no Neiman, no Leishman to an extent, but also just, we spoke about it after Royal Melbourne, the challenge of drawing together 12 guys from disparate parts of the world, different languages, different cultures, eat different foods. It's just incredible. Like they've got no right really to get close, to be fair. And yet 2 tournaments in a row now, it's been genuinely exciting. So I think on the whole, if I take a step back, a bit of a macro view of the concept, I just don't know how you could feel as though you need to blow that up. I genuinely wish we were, and I say this with the greatest amount of respect, God, I wish we were going somewhere else other than Canada for the next one.
Yeah.
Because that is like,
I
don't know. Exactly. And I don't know that you could get a genuine home game for the internationals comparatively to the Americans, but at least like Royal Melbourne made them think. It took them until the singles to figure it out, right? It actually took them until Sunday to figure the course out. They're going to go up to Canada, and it's same. We see this all the time. Take it to South America. Take it to Japan. Take it to Korea. Take it anywhere. Just don't take it literally next door.
Yeah,
it's frustrating, but I think on the whole, it was awesome.
Yeah,
it was awesome.
I think that's probably a little bit of a change in our thinking. I think after Royal Melbourne, we were kind of calling for the concept to be blown up, and in terms of like, let's just go back to the drawing board. I think the mixed option is still, I would definitely like to see that. But look, I'm also okay if it does stay the same. I mean, I was pretty nervous when on the first day in the first match, our two best players in Adam Scott and Hideki Matsuyama get beaten 6-5 by Cantlay and Shawfley. I'm not going to lie, that made me very nervous. Made me very nervous for what was to come. But yeah, I think all in all, like I think the international team can take a lot of confidence and almost a win in a way. Like they're not holding the trophy, but they can take a certain element of victory away from this. I heard Trevor Immelman speaking about like it's been 6 to 8 weeks of just trying to work out what food that they need to have in the team room, to your point before. So like just the little things that the American team doesn't have to deal with is quite significant, and probably to a lesser extent what the European Ryder Cup team has to deal with. I mean, a lot of those people would be coming from places where they either speak English as a second language or they play very well. I mean, someone like Hideki, doesn't speak English in front of the media and only speaks very small pieces of English. So delivering a team talk that resonates with everyone, there would be people sitting there who actually don't understand what's going on. So I think the challenge in that is quite a unique challenge for the international team.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at the international team, there's a lot to be excited about. It would be a shame if, like, it's a weird thing to say because, they've lost both of them, but you'd be naive not to think they've carried a bunch of momentum out of 2019 and now 2022. The last two has really engendered and built something in that team from a culture perspective, from a wanting to play for each other perspective, for wanting to represent this shield, because they are, yes, representing their country, but they are an international team, right? And to have built something that they all buy into so vehemently is actually quite incredible. And you look at that team, there's not too many tipping out. Like Scotty is probably not going around for an 11th time, I wouldn't have thought.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to, be surprised in 2 years' time. Hideki will be on the verge. He'd be there, I would think. Corey Connors and Taylor Penrith would be hard-pressed to get another shot. But we've spoken about all those guys on the outside. Fox, Hughes, Lee, Herbert, all the South Africans coming through. Higo, Burmester popped up on his PGA Tour debut and has the top 5. So you've also got like this group of Koreans played their absolute nuts off.
Mm-hmm.
Like Im, Siwoo Kim, Tommy the Tank Engine Kim, and KH Lee were unreal. And keeping those 4 together, what that means to them, what that means to Korean golf, I just think it would be such a shame now. And I know this sounds so strange comparatively to my, apathetic mood towards the President's Cup 2 and a bit weeks ago. You take the time and you watch it, though, it would be a shame to rip that away from them because there are guys here. Sung Jae has been a part of the last 2, and he's turning into a genuine leader in that international team. Tom Kim is a star now, an absolute star based on not even 4 days of golf, really probably 2 days of golf. And the reality is he had a losing record. He was 2-3 from the tournament, but he's an absolute star, right? So, yeah, it would be, I think, short-sighted just to say, well, in many respects, it's not even about results. Like getting within 5 was probably a win, to be honest. So yeah, I think it would be a little bit short-sighted to feel the need to strip this back and start again.
No, completely agree. 100%. And as I said, like I thought we were going to get demolished, and the 6-5 that Scotty and Hideki lost to Cantlay and Shawfley. I mean, like that was obviously the worst loss that we had. And then there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 times where 5 times where no 4 times where we lost a match 4 and 3. And other than that, the rest were generally pretty close. Like they either went through to the last hole or they went down to the last couple of holes. So there was certainly positive signs that the international team was building towards something. And I mean, you look at some of the records of guys. I mean, guys like Corey Connors and Taylor Pendrith obviously didn't contribute points wise. Mito Pereira 0.5 point. Hideki was obviously pretty disappointing, really, with 1.5 points, as was Christian Bezadenhout. And someone like Siwoo Kim pops up and wins 3 points and has a 3-1 record, and Sebastian Munoz has a 2-0-1 record. Like there were guys who I probably didn't expect to stand up that kind of stood up. So yeah, it surprises me to see Hideki and Scotty with losing records. And you know, perhaps someone like a Corey Connors, I definitely didn't expect to go completely winless or even not score a point. So I think there was some positive signs there for the international team, no doubt.
Mate, Munoz was unreal.
Mm.
He for me was very similar to I think Abe Answer in 2019. This kind of, I think he's probably got a little bit more of a profile heading into this than Answer did heading into 2019, and has tasted a little bit more success on the PGA Tour, having won a couple of tournaments. But a relatively unheralded player who, in that environment, just seemed to thrive. He was so good. Siwoo Kim is a stone cold killer. That singles game to lead off against a guy who I think both subconsciously but absolutely at times intentionally tries to throw you off your game in Justin Thomas. He brings a lot. Like, there's a lot of extra, what I like to call extracurricular. Drudes. There's a lot of extracurricular around JT in a team environment. He's not like that when he plays. He is like maybe rolling in a long putt. He gets passionate at the pointy end of a tournament. But all the other stuff, he's only like that in 2 environments, the Ryder Cup and the President's Cup. There's a lot of stuff going on. To stare that down and know that, like, you must win. Like, if you lose, that's the domino effect. Siwoo Kim was fucking unbelievable in that singles game. The other guy I want to make mention of, Cam Davis.
Mm-hmm.
Like, probably a lot of people, I say this with the greatest amount of respect to Cam. I'd say outside of the Taylor Pendrith selection, a lot of people saw that and were like, what? What do you mean? And he was, again, similar to Tom Kim. He walks away with a losing record. He's 2 and 3. But there were moments, particularly down the stretch in that, what was it? It was in the 4th round. Was it foursomes or 4-ball with Scotty? I'm just looking here.
4th round. Was
4-ball with Scotty.
Yeah.
Where they ended up when he won up over Horschel and Burns. He was unbelievable down the stretch in that. And, like, again, he's a big winner on the PGA Tour, genuine talent. But I think people are seeing, it's what I love about this environment. We saw it in 2019 with Answer, with particularly Smithy, to a lesser extent Neiman. This environment can create stars, but it can also reveal things that have been there that a lot of people haven't seen just by virtue of the platform. Team golf is such it's got a unique way of exposing frailties. So, like someone like Corey Connors, you mentioned, he's one of the best iron players in the world, right? One of the genuine best iron players in the world. Mm-hmm. But when you're forced into alternate shot and you're playing a chip when someone's hit a shit approach and that's not your strength, or you're forced to putt, not putting your own ball from close proximity because you're one of the best iron players in the world, it exposes some frailties. It exposes your vulnerabilities. It also has a tendency to provide an exceptional platform for people who thrive under pressure and who thrive in the ability to stand up and perform. And, Matt, I think, not to overblow because he did have a losing record at 2 and 3, but there's something about Cam Davis. He loved that. Like, he loved every single minute of that experience. It's not for everyone, but because of how much I love team golf, I love guys who stand up in team golf, and I think he's got. I definitely think he's got a future in that team. Does Cam Davis?
Yeah, well, good to see another Aussie. Obviously, we only had a couple this year, and normally we have a fairly good representation. So good to see from a selfish point of view, good to see an Aussie forming admirably. Anyway,
last thing from me on the President's Cup, I think we'll talk about all we want about talent and getting close and the depth and all of those things, going to Canada, etc. I think it's inevitable that Mike Weir will be the captain of the international team, and rightfully so. Incredible player throughout his career, made a contribution to the team. It's in Canada. It seems natural. That is such an important job, and I don't think there's any coincidence that the last two have. There's a correlation between Ernie Els in 2019 and Trevor Immelman in 2022, and the success of those both teams down to those two individuals. Mike Weir's got a hell of a job ahead of him to carry that, because it's not for everyone. We see great captains, we see pretty poor captains in team golf. Don't want to piss on his parade before it started, but like Immelman was exceptional, and he made errors. I think he made some errors at the selection table, and then he even made errors throughout. Like he probably should have played someone like Munoz a bit more because he was on a heater, right? So it wasn't faultless, but he did an exceptional job, as did Ernie Els 3 years ago. And it's a big part of the reason why they do well is because they led well, and that's it's a bit of pressure for Mike Weir now, I think.
Yeah, I think it's probably a no-brainer. Going to Canada, it makes a lot of sense, right? Just in terms of, they've probably got the PGA Tour also wanting Mike Weir to be the captain in terms of the PR that will come with it and all of that. But it makes total sense for him to be there. Obviously, he was a vice captain again this year, and it makes complete and utter sense in my head.
And it's tough, right? Because there would be a temptation to bring Immelman back as a vice captain because there's consistency there, right? Like if you look at 2019, you had Immelman, you had Weir, you had KJ Choi, you had Jeff Ogilvy. They were Ernie's assistants. You go this year, Immelman's your captain. You've got Weir, you've got KJ Choi again, you've got Jeff Ogilvy again. So even for the players, those that have played across both, the level of consistency around the setup, there would be a temptation to bring Immelman back as an assistant.
Yep.
But what does that do to your authority as a captain? To have the guy that, there's a natural tendency to default to because, he's now, I'm sure it could be overcome, but it wouldn't surprise me either way. It would be great to see him involved, but I also wouldn't be surprised because you didn't see Ernie involved. It was Trevor's team. It has to be Mike's team. So, it'll be fascinating, that dynamic. I'm sure KJ Choi will be there. I'm sure Jeff Ogilvy will be there. But it'll be really interesting to see if Immelman's involved in some way, shape or form.
Yeah, agreed. Be a good one to watch over the next couple of years anyway.
That's pretty much it, mate, in terms of what's been happening the last couple of weeks. There's obviously stuff going on in the live world. The PGA Tour have filed a countersuit now. Yeah. So the legal battle probably will drag out longer than I would think any resolution. They might still be fighting at a point at which players are back playing on the tour and playing in team events, and they might still be in the courts at this rate. It's phenomenal.
Who knows?
One thing I just do want to mention quickly here. I'm certainly not a apologist for the live tour, but I've been interested to see the reaction, and maybe we can pick apart this on a separate episode. There probably is space for a broader episode around the business of golf, I think, is somewhere in our schedule. But I've been fascinated to see the reaction to the suggestion that Liv might have to pay Fox to put it on Fox Golf. Like, that's unprecedented. It's not at all for sports to pay the networks to put their content on television. It's uncommon because we don't hear about it. We only ever hear about the $4 or $5 billion new broadcast rights deal for the AFL, or similar for the NRL, or similar for the NFL, the NBA. Like, we hear about those big leagues, the Premier League, who get billions of dollars for their rights. There are a lot of sports who have to fork out of their own pocket to cover the cost of production to put sport on TV. So I know people want to see it as some sort of weakness or like hammer blow. And don't get me wrong, they haven't been overwhelmed. I'm not surprised because Fox is probably looking at the streaming numbers on YouTube and saying, well, I'm not paying for that. Why would I? But it's not necessarily like, oh my God, I can't believe you have to pay to put your product on the television. It's not an uncommon thing.
Yes. No, I think you've hit the nail on the head. And again, I go back to the point that I've said ages ago, like I don't think a broadcast deal is the be all and end all for Live Golf. Like they're not doing it to recoup money through advertising. They're not doing it for any other reason than to push it to more people because they don't need to. They've got an endless bit of money and that's basically going to be it. So yeah, another interesting one to keep an eye on, particularly over the next 3 to 4 months anyway, as more live events start rolling out, as schedule gets, sort of fleshed out for next year, etc. So I think they're in Thailand this week as well, I believe. So I think that'll be a really interesting one. I mean, obviously we've seen, first one was in England and then the rest have been in America. So
in the States.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how it translates outside.
Saudi Arabia is on the horizon, heading to Jeddah soon. So it is on the horizon. I'm sure they'll be overwhelmed with crowds when it heads back to the motherland in Saudi Arabia. So look, yes. I think we're so early in this. There's a lot to play out, but we will continue to keep it at arm's length, but certainly an eye on it as it develops.
Yes. We'll be got a full Aussie season preview coming next week, which will be exciting. Yes. Obviously, we kind of did our chat with Jimmy Emmanuel was very broad brush, but it kind of turned half into an Aussie season preview. But that kicks off next week over here in WA. So next week you will be hearing a full season preview, which will be exciting.
You will. We're also trying to tee up a time to talk to our man, Whizzer, Justin Warren, who is over in the States. He's currently over there for Corn Ferry Tour Q School.
Going quite nicely too, by the way.
Yeah, I was just about to say one of 4 Aussies to have made it through to the second round of that Q School. So I'm just pulling up the story here. Classic.
John Lyris, I think, was one.
John Lyris was one. Sure, I saw it on the PGA of Australia's website this week. So, look, that'll teach me. I probably should have pulled it up before I mentioned it. Definitely 4 Australians through to the second round of the Corn Ferry Tour Q School, including our man, Justin Warren. So the Wiz, we're going to try and catch up with him before mid-October is the second round. He is currently about to try Monday Q for the Shriners, which is the next event on the PGA Tour. So I believe the message was, if I don't Monday qualify, let's try and get it done this week. So I'm sure he'll be in touch, and that's coming down the pipeline as well. So great to see the Wizard having a bit of success. He's a very, very good man, is our mate Justin Warren. So richly deserved. Obviously, this is the pointy end now. Not to suggest that any stage of Q School is easy, but the first is obviously the easiest. So it only gets harder from here. For the Wiz, but yeah, he's put in an absolute bucket load of work, as was I. So I'd love to see him rewarded with a spot through to the second round. We'll talk to him about that and his other travels, I think.
Yes.
Obviously, some stage we can catch up with him in the next week or two.
Sounds good, KM. I don't have anything else to raise. What have you got?
I think that's it, mate. No, I think that's it. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff we probably could, but do we really need to? Would be the question. This is where we often get ourselves in trouble, and we turn an hour into almost 2. So
let's wrap it up.
I agree. All right, mate. It's a pleasure to have you back. As always, this is a partnership after all. It's not good if either of us are away. We love talking shop on Monday evening. It's good to have you back. Glad it was a fruitful trip down to the southwest, and we will continue to flesh out the ideas for Live From, the 4-parter from the Drudy. Drudy Fuller Nuptials coming up in February of 23.